in the regional newspaper group for the New York Times Company. The situation is characterized by three things, really. The first is very strong brands, very strong papers with communities that rely on them to set the agenda, to inform people of what the important issues are. And that's a hugely important point. That's a critical benefit of having these great brands like the Sarasota Herald-Tribune. That's the first thing. The second thing, a terrific group of employees. The staff of the papers, just about across the board, is creative, hardworking, and dedicated to what they're doing. The third thing I find is an economy that has been through a terrible, terrible time. So it's tough on every industry. I don't think there's any industry that's come through the last year that hasn't had a difficult time. And certainly the media business, newspapers and websites, have not been spared from that.
With the economy as it is, the newspaper industry and the media industry was already facing a challenge before the economy got as bad as it did. Has that prevented you from maybe taking certain steps that you would have otherwise liked to take to get things on the right track? And how has that affected the decisions that you've made to move forward?
Well, the issues that I think you're talking about, we talk about two changes. One is secular, meaning by that this is a change that is fundamental in society, that's unlikely to stop, and that is the advent of the internet, the changes in the way people consume information that traditionally was the newspaper and then broadcast and the internet. We all know that chain. And that has created dislocations, but in fact, we were dealing with those dislocations very well. Newspapers are still the dominant voice in the community. They're still the dominant advertising medium in the community. Our websites are almost uniformly the dominant local website in the communities they're in. And our revenue, while it was declining a few percent a year. And that's quite manageable, particularly since now the internet revenue is growing. So we were doing pretty well, in fact very well, on that transition. Then came this enormous economic dislocation. Now, it started in Florida earlier. It started in Florida really in 2006 with the housing that crescendoed last year. And that did cause us to make some difficult choices in terms of what we were going to produce, in terms of our news report, how widely we were going to distribute our papers in circulation. And there's no question that it limited, for a time, the amount of investment we could make in our websites and in mobile, in e-readers, the other devices. But I think we've gotten through that period in pretty good shape. The indicators I see are that the economy's in much better shape than it was a year ago. The credit situations are easing. That was another seriously aggravating factor. So we're now at a point where we're considering this much more normal.
Are you at a point yet where you feel like you can actually make investments in certain things, in certain new, whether it's a new product or like you said, the website or something like that? Or do you feel like you still kind of just need to be in a holding pattern and not cut?
Well, even during the worst of the holding pattern, we were still allocating resources to new endeavors. I mean, we can't be in this business and not be investing in our websites and not be investing in mobile, because they are becoming very important ways they are very important ways that people communicate and that people consume information. So even in the worst of this credit crisis and economic recession, we continued to put resources against those things, and we're doing it now.
What are you looking at investing in next? You know, what are you looking at and you're saying that's where we need to go?
One is clearly mobile. As I just do my own little survey of how people use their cell phones, I find much more often they're looking at it as opposed to talking on it. It's an information device, and the iPhone has just made that an extraordinary experience. So investing in how we display our information on mobile, how people can access our information on mobile, is a clear one. And that comes directly to the web also. So I find we're talking much more about digital and less about the web, because digital includes the web, it includes mobile, it includes e-readers, all the alternate ways to deliver information. And right now our task is to create the same importance, the same weight on digital that we have in print. There's no question the standing of the Herald-Tribune in Sarasota. We want the website, which is very important and a big website, to have the same kind of standing and to play the same prominent role in people's lives, in how they navigate the things they want to do, whether it's information they're searching for, shopping that they want to get done, entertainment they want to consume. We want to be that central organizing principle.
Do you see that ultimately influencing the kind of news gathering and the kind of reporting that happens? Because the kinds of things that you might read on a mobile device are different than what you might read in a printed paper, simply because of the space.
Yes. People generally prefer shorter articles on the web, so we have to be mindful in the way we present information that the most important is up front. And so if somebody reads a short amount, they've got a good capsule. But I think the biggest difference is around aggregation. Our newspapers traditionally have written information and they've collected information. And the information they collected would be stock reports, movie listings, baseball or football, sports statistics. Not information we create, but information we collect and present. And people have started doing that in different ways. So you see much less of it in newspapers, but the digital gives us the opportunity to do that again. And particularly the services on mobile telephones and on the web really call out for a new way of coordinating and centralizing that information, a new presentation that gets to what is there to do that's within 2,000 yards of me right now. And how do I know the full range of services and things I can do? And I think the media groups we have, the Sarasota Herald-Tribune, are in prime position to create that.
Do you think that they'll be able to actually make money on it?
Absolutely.
In what way?
Advertising is the traditional one, but people pay for information over mobile phones. They don't pay for a lot of information over the web, but they do over mobile phones. We have the opportunity to sell services over mobile, and if we're as successful as I believe we'll be in creating this consolidation and presentation of news and information broadly read, that's a service people will pay for.
What kind of timeline do you see in terms of, do you have something in your head in terms of, I would like to see us launching a new product for people on their mobile devices within a certain amount of time?
Oh, I think you'll see us launching a considerable number of things this year.
Also, back to the sort of economy and the status of the regionals here, do you see the stable of regionals staying the same for now, or do you think we might see some adjustments either by selling something or acquiring something different?
No, we're very pleased with the properties we have. I don't see a lot of change in that in the near term or even the medium term.
And I know workforce is one thing that a lot of people look at. Obviously, things are changing, maybe with the roles that people are playing. But with the economy getting better, do you see that you'll be able to keep the workforce the same, or do you think there may have to be more cuts in 2010?
I think there'll be changes in 2010. I think there'll be both additions and perhaps some reductions. as we reallocate our resources and conclude where we think are the areas most important to attack, and therefore put more resources. And if we're going to do that, some will be new resources, but some will be resources pulled from other areas.
I want to ask you about something a little bit different. I want to ask you about the Haiti story with your background. And this is obviously, this is an international story, but it gets play in every medium, and now you're looking at the regional group, which are very local newspapers, with so much out there and the ability to get information from so many different places. How do you think local news operations should handle that?
Well, there are a couple of things that come to mind immediately there. One is, this is a heartbreaking story. It is misery compounded on misery. Haiti is probably the poorest country in the hemisphere, and it has the least developed infrastructure. And for a tragedy like this earthquake, it just makes everything abominable. And that operates on a human level, that people want to consume it. They want to know what's happened, and they want to understand what it means. So that's a role for explanatory journalism. That's at the core of what we do. And print has a way of doing it that's different than broadcast. Broadcast is great at portraying the immediacy, the emotion. Print is very good at portraying the context and the meaning. So the two complement each other. So that's one thing, that it's just an irresistible story. The second place is, there's almost always some local angle, whether it's rescue forces that are going from the local community to Haiti, whether it's fundraising efforts that are going on, or it's individuals that are stationed with armed forces groups that are impacted. So there's usually a local angle, a local reaction that's interesting, because that makes it even more personal to people in the community. And there's just this unbelievable, heart-wrenching story to be told.
I should have asked you this as we were talking about some of the technology things, but I do want to ask you about specifically the print product, because over the past year and a half, a lot of news organizations have made changes, gone completely electronic, cut their delivery on certain days. In Detroit, not delivering certain days at all. Do you see that as a valid possibility for any of the regionals, or for the New York Times itself in the coming year?
I'd be surprised if you see that from any of our properties in the coming year. People like the 7-day frequency of a print product. Some days there's more to it than others, partly because of just the natural rhythm of the week, and partly because of the news cycle. But that habit, that comfort of having the paper every day, is something that our subscribers are telling us they value. We do see some increases on Sunday, some increases on the weekend, as people are very geared around weekend activities and want more information for that. It has those coming up a little bit in sales compared to other days of the week. But I don't see us reducing the frequency like that. I think that's a much longer play.
Anything else coming up in 2010 that you want to share?
Well, I think what's coming up in 2010 is some good news to leaven the nearly relentless bad news that we've had. I'm speaking strictly for myself now. I think I see some signs that activity is picking up in the economy. And as I look at previous recessions, rebounds have often been faster than people expected. The big question going into this recession was how long is it going to last? Is this going to be a U or a V? And I don't think the people who projected the very long recessions are going to be right.